America is on the move, but will our transportation system be able to keep up? Transportation is the backbone of the U.S. economy. Americans spend about $800 billion each year on freight and transportation services, more than any other personal expense except for housing. But Americans also spend billions of hours each year delayed on major highways and in airports, delays which take a bite out of our nation's bottom line.
Without an efficient, low-cost, responsive transportation system, we all suffer. In short, good transportation is the foundation of our national economic life. We all have a vital stake in seeing our transportation system continue to be the best in the world.
Because projected needs for the future far surpass current public and private sector programs, we must broaden the base of support for transportation, reinvigorate investment, and tap new sources of ideas and capital to meet growing needs. We need a national transportation policy to move America into the 21st century. Last year, the Department of Transportation launched an unprecedented series of public hearings across the country to get the input of the people who use and provide transportation services. Americans told us in no uncertain terms that they need safe, efficient, and reliable transportation now and want to improve the system for future generations.
I'm proud of the transportation system, but I am concerned about the congestion.
And it is just amazing how crowded things are, how crowded the streets are, how worn out the streets are from so much traffic.
Well, the only way to help congestion is obviously to build more airports.
If you develop a project that has a regional impact, you need to be concerned about what you're doing. Otherwise, before you know it, the whole area will be congested.
I believe the state and the local governments and the private sector should be involved in the transportation problems we have.
Just worry about safety, that's all.
The National Transportation Policy responds to these public concerns with strategies and actions that can help America to reach its transportation goals. The policy calls for an improved transportation system, one that serves the needs of all Americans, young and old, minorities, and the disadvantaged. A system with a sound financial base, supported by users and opened up even more to funding from private business. A strong and competitive industry free from unnecessary regulations and able to respond to the needs of the people it serves. The policy calls for a transportation system that is compatible with the environment and that supports public safety and national security. And finally, the National Transportation Policy recognizes that a modern transportation system must take advantage of the latest engineering and technology. Now, that's a tall order, and it's an order that the federal government should not and could not do alone. The National Transportation Policy will tap the energy and initiative of people like you, those who use and provide transportation services. It is designed to stimulate competition and allow the magic of the marketplace to work. And it is designed to increase reliance on the private sector and state and local governments.
On a local level, we know what our problems are in our own community, and I believe that we can deal with it better. For instance, with mass transit, we know better what our community will use. Some communities use rail, other communities use buses. I think it makes a big difference in not being told what you have to do, that you have to do it a certain way, but being flexible to be able to do it the way we know that our people are going to respond and the way it's going to benefit our community. That's important. Our citizens won't have any trouble paying increased user fees if they are sure that it's going to go for transportation.
The time is now to begin implementing the National Transportation Policy. Major reauthorizing legislation will be enacted in 1990 and 91 to ensure that the federal government can carry out its obligations in aviation and in our highway and mass transportation systems. Other legislation will be needed to address key concerns involving railroads, merchant marine, Coast Guard, and safety functions. On March 8th, President Bush and Transportation Secretary Samuel Skinner unveiled the National Transportation Policy in Washington and called for a partnership for progress in transportation.
Just as the Model T and the Kitty Hawk prepared the way for today's millions of cars and thousands of passenger jets, so it is now our turn to invest in America's future, to begin to create the transportation system of the 21st century. On the ground, over the waterways, and in the air and space, our mission for this decade and the next century is to build on our achievements, to link the nations of the world as we've linked the states of this great country. The national transportation is our blueprint, if you will, for this new world. And as I said in the State of the Union last month, it's time to act, and it's time to give our state and local governments the flexibility that they need to best use federal funds. We also have a strategy for airports and for removing economic regulation of the trucking industry. You heard the Secretary talk about those. And most of all, we have a strategy to unleash the creative genius of American technology. This technology took us to the moon, and now it must make travel to space economical and commonplace. And this genius built a network of highways, and now we must support and encourage advanced technologies in the whole field of transportation, from magnetically levitated trains to intelligent vehicles and highways to advanced materials and engineering.
The National Transportation Policy we unveiled today provides a strategic framework for that investment of time, of money, and of commitment. It shapes the movement of passengers and goods in the 1990s and beyond. Simply put, the policy emphasizes doing the right things with our limited resources, focusing on systems of national significance and promoting national priorities, improving mobility, improving the efficient movement of goods, providing jobs, and improving the quality of life for all Americans. We deliberately structured the policy to be intermodal in nature, driven by the freedom of the marketplace and focused on moving America toward a transportation system that promotes U.S. competitiveness both at home and abroad. It is a long-range strategy with guidelines that emphasize increased private sector transportation investment and job-producing economic growth. This document is not the conclusion of a project, but the beginning of a new era and an ongoing process. It has given us a long-term vision for the future and short-term decision-making framework for major initiatives. Among the 169 guidelines and 65 legislative objectives in the policy are long-term goals that will help to preserve transportation facilities currently in place and expand essential capacity. We want to close the gap in the transportation network to promote effective connections between rural and urban areas, between ports and inland points, and between modes. And we also want to maintain the integrity of the trust funds and ensure that all transportation user fees are spent for their intended purpose for investments to improve transportation. And finally, the policy provides greater flexibility for state and local governments to raise revenues. For example, collecting tolls on highways and encouraging greater public and private investment in transportation. The policy supports certain goals. We must pursue the continued deregulation of the trucking industry, something the President has been so supportive on when he was Vice President, and strive for uniformity of state regulations. We must remove inequitable labor requirements that limit productivity in the railroad industry, in aviation safety, in highway safety, boating safety, and in the transportation of hazardous materials and petroleum products. The policy ensures that our #1 priority will continue to be safety.
And if we work together in this joint venture, America can continue to be the world leader in transportation. I'm delighted to be with you. I want to congratulate the officials from the Department of Transportation, and now let's go to work. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Sam.
The National Transportation Policy may be complete, but really our work has just begun. How can you get involved? Write to the Department of Transportation for more information and help move America into the 21st century.